Streaming from the Oilers Live Studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey, it's Michael here from the Oilers Live podcast, back with another live stream. Tonight, I've got as my guest Jared Brown. He is the head scout from DraftPro Hockey. You can find them on Twitter at DraftPro Hockey, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And then Jared at Jared Brown with the double N97 on Twitter, as you can see on the video there. Thanks for joining me tonight, Jared. How you doing?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me, Michael.
Excellent. Yeah, good to see you, and good to meet you and have you on. And I had a chance to look over your the latest 2021 draft guide put out by Draft Prospects Hockey, or DraftPro Hockey. Great job. Yeah, feel good to get that done?
Very. I mean, there's a lot of work that went into the guide. Starting from our director of scouting, Dan Stewart, leading the charge. A lot of long hours, staying up late to get this done. And, we wanted to get it out at an appropriate time so all the draft followers could really read and get in depth before the July date of the draft. So, yeah, just like every year when it comes and goes, we're excited to publish our draft guide every year, just like last year. Super excited about it. And this year, I was even more excited. I thought we made a lot of new cool changes to it, and I was really happy about it. So definitely proud of this one, and one that I think is just near the top.
Yeah, for those of you, if you haven't checked it out, check it out. You can go to draftprospectshockey.com. I think it's what is it, $10 to buy the guide?
Yeah, like the digital download is around, I think, $10.99. And then we also have the draft yearbook, which is an in-depth look at the draft guide. You get everything that the draft guide has, but instead you're going to get the actual game reports from our scouts, starting from all the way from 2019, when we followed these prospects in their early years, all the way to I guess it would be the under 18 tournament that wrapped up in April or so. That was so the draft yearbook is very long. It's around like 500 pages because it's got just a bunch of scouting reports, bunch of game reports from all of our scouts. So and that's an extra maybe a couple bucks. And but yeah, you can get it all at our website.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's and it's excellent. It was I've only checked the draft guide out so far, but I'll check out the draft yearbook. Very well done. Pretty in depth. I mean, if the draft guide is or draft, now I'm confused as to what John. If the draft yearbook is bigger than the draft guide, that's a lot of content and a lot of work. And thanks for putting that together. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was. I mean, like I don't actually know how Dan put it all together for 500 pages or whatever it was for the yearbook. Obviously that is for people who really want to see what we write and how a game report is really compiled and put together after watching a full game. But yeah, it's and then if you're just a casual fan that is excited for the draft, then the draft guide is definitely for you.
Yeah. So what would you say for yourself and in terms of your input in there? Like, how many of these players would you have had input in?
Well, it's actually interesting because this year, even though COVID has hit, and obviously I'm based out of Ontario, so I haven't, OHL season canceled, I wasn't able to get to any games. But I was actually able to cover from all across the globe, really, thankfully. So I could really discuss and have a lot of discussions with our draft ranking. So I'd cover, I try to cover at least, almost half of, the players we have ranked. I mean, we look at 300 players, but we look at 400 players and all that. Obviously, I can't get to all 400 players. So the main thing I would look at is trying to get the top 100 players for sure. That would be the main goal, and make sure I'm confident that they are deserving of being ranked in our top 100. And then obviously the first rounders I tried to look at as maybe the most, so they are the ones that are the big names, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those first round guys take a lot of attention for sure. Give me an idea in your, what it is you're looking for as a scout, prior to, releasing some of this information. I mean, what things, look, I know one of the friends of the show, Sean Patrick Ryan, he does the Oil Night, he's always looking for NHL translatable skills, right? I mean, what kind of things are you looking for when you're looking at these players?
I think the biggest NHL translatable skill that I'm going to look for is pretty much their hockey IQ and their intelligence and how they handle pressure. If there's someone that is going to panic a lot once they get a little bit of pressure and they have forecheckers coming bearing down on them, right? I would say that I wouldn't really, I'd want to see a little bit more composure, a little bit more poise, have them take a little extra second. Or sometimes it's simple as, especially, I look for this a lot in defensemen. Just like passing it off to your defense partner if he's open, right? Instead of panicking and throwing a pizza up the middle or off the glass. So I think composure is a big thing. And another one is, and it can definitely come with size, is how they handle contact and how they handle pressure. Because I mean, that's such a big thing, obviously, with hockey. And, let's take, the story of the NHL maybe right now, who is Cole Caulfield. He's 5'7", but he doesn't really play like he's 5'7". He's not really afraid of contact, and that's all I need. I don't care if you're 5'2". if you're able to fight through contact and control the puck, obviously that's the biggest thing, or make a play through contact, then I think you'll have a good chance of translating to the NHL regardless of your size. And then it can go both ways, right? If a guy who's 6'4", but maybe he's actually scared of contact, then he's got a little bit of leeway because he's got the average size. He's got not average size. He's got the ideal NHL power forward size, let's say. But, he's got to develop that ability to not be afraid of contact and use his body to his advantage and cycle the puck down low, come in wide to drop a shoulder on a defenseman. So I'd say coming through contact and hockey IQ and their intelligence are really big NHL translatable skills. And that's something I look for, especially on a first viewing of a player.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. And, we'll maybe move on, because something I've been kind of interested in, obviously, with this year, with the pandemic over the last, year and a half, I guess, when you're looking at prospects, you're watching prospects, it's all a little bit different. You don't get you haven't got quite as many games to watch them. A lot of conversation around, and if we have time, we'll talk about it. But 2023, Connor Bedard and these guys that went overseas, right? And so that's a new dynamic. Trying to find footage and trying to get be able to watch the game and ensure that you're getting the players that you want. Like, how would you say the difference has been for you? Has it been very noticeable in what you've been able to do, and what's the difference between this year and, say, prior years? I know you're trying to watch a number of players, so you're not always able to get out and actually watch them live, but certainly a lot more difficult this year.
I think one thing that was really different about this year is kind of foreshadowing to next season, or next draft, I should say, 2022. Very hard to get a gauge on who's going to be near the top of 2022 draft class, or who's just maybe a player that could be just hovering around the second, third round, because normally, you would go to a junior hockey game, let's say in Canada, WHL, Q, or the O, and you're going to watch the draft as a scout. You're going to watch the draft eligible players, of course, but then you're going to see a guy who was drafted in the first round in the OIL draft, let's say, and okay, let's keep an eye on him. Let's see if he's going to be maybe a first round or whatever. Like for example, I this year not getting a chance to see the first overall pick in the OHL, Ty Nelson. I don't know how he's progressed. I don't know where he's at in his game, with his physical maturity, his skating. I mean, these are all things that progress with age, and obviously we got to keep in mind they're teenagers. So I would say really having an early look at next year's draft class was tougher than in previous years that we had. And I think the obvious one that was really tougher was not being able to go in and watch any live games this year. Like I said earlier, I'm based out of Ontario, and we've been locked down for pretty much a year and a half, or it feels like it. and so I haven't been able to get into any live games. I haven't been able to go see an OHL game. I don't know how long. So it's been tough, and nothing beats a live viewing on a player, because you get to see some of their maybe tendencies when they go back to the bench, how they react and how they interact with their coach, which can be not a huge, but it can be a telling to kind of like their attitude level, right? Maybe coach comes over and wants to give him some advice and all that. If he looks like he's not even paying attention to him, then, well, does he not have respect for that coach? What's the relationship about, right? How is it? So nothing really beats a live viewing. And, obviously this year it was all video viewing. So definitely a different kind of scouting look that we all had to go through. And those are the two real challenges I found this year. And I mean, going back to the 2022 and early look on them, there could be guys that I have no clue of that would just be considered first rounders from maybe the first month of hockey that I get to watch. And it's like, okay, but I wasn't able to watch that at all this year. So different year for sure, but you know what, there were a lot of obstacles for everyone. So, we all just grinded through it.
Yeah, in your gut, does it? I mean, because if you take the sort of the top 5 in this year's draft class, I mean, it's a jumble, right? Like every scout, every prospects analyst out there has the top 5 a little bit different. I mean, you got Powers, almost the consensus number 1, but I'd say that, or Power rather, and yet just today I saw him on somebody else's number 2, and so on and so forth. And of course, the one that I see bouncing anywhere from 1 to 5 is Hughes. I mean, do you think if the year had been a normal one, that we'd see a more clear differentiated number 1 through 5, or is this a product of what the year entailed?
I think I actually think it would have been the same. I think this draft class has a lot of players that are around the same tier in that 1 to 5 range, 5 to 10 range. I mean, for me, I have really the top 3. I think it's our top 3 with Power, Clark, and Hughes. Those are my top 3 that I think they're a little bit in a tier in their own. But when I say they're in a tier of their own, it's very, very small. They're just above Dylan Guenther and William Eklund and Matt Beniers. I mean, Matt Beniers is one guy who, he could be a player that goes right into the NHL next year because of his maturity and how he plays the game. Plays like an NHL player right now. So, but I think it would have been the same. It was definitely a different year, but I think more or less it all would have stayed the same because of how they are. They are all around. There's no bona fide number 1 like Lafreniere. I wouldn't, there's no Lafreniere. There's no obviously there's not a generational player like McDavid. So I think it's all really they're all around a player where if you pick Power number 1, who's the consensus, then you're getting a quality defenseman that has the upside of a top pairing guy. But if you say no, I'm going to go with William Eklund, who I've seen people have him number 1, right? Yeah. Well, you're probably getting you could get a top line player as well. So, but are any of them going to reach that elite status? Maybe. Like I think Power could get it. I think Clark can get it. I think they can be elite players, but I don't think. I think for the most part, a lot of them are going to be top line or top pairing guys, and that's what makes them so jumbled and so close together.
Yeah. So, that leads into, I mean, let's just talk some prospects now and chat about the upcoming draft, which for those of you that those of you that don't know, it's July 23rd. This year is the first round, the 24th. Obviously for rounds 2 through 7. And the Oilers have a number of picks this year. They've got, of course, they don't have anything between on the second and third round. One of those was the Lucic debacle, we'll call it, and then but the Oilers pick this year at 19. Kind of nice to pick a little bit lower down the down the patch. And then we don't get a pick until fourth round at 115. And then in those late rounds, you never know what's going where and when they'll pick. So it's hard to guess. They could move up to a third round usually or something like that, depending on what kind of action happens on the floor. But 19 is where we start in the first round, and that's where we're going on the 23rd. So make sure you watch that. Now let's talk about the prospects and the DraftPro. If you go ahead and go to draftprospectshockey.com. You can buy the Draft Prospects Guide, DraftPro Guide, and in there it's going to rank all of their prospects in the way and you've got a little short write up on everybody in the first round, I believe, if I remember correctly, up to 32. Of course, we're adding in the Kraken. Is it the Kraken or the Kraken? I think it's the Kraken, but
I'll go with the Kraken.
Yeah. I mean, it just occurred to me. Yeah. I think it's the Kraken, but I'm sure some people will be calling it the Kraken. We'll see.
Well, it's funny because we were talking about it, me and my, just, briefly off topic, but me and my family were talking about how what would their chant be? You have go Oilers, go Leafs, go whatever. My dad brought up one that I think would be really, or not my dad, my girlfriend's dad brought up one that would be really good. It would be "Let's Get Kraken," and that'd be pretty creative. I like that one. So if anything, I think they should go with that. But yeah, so for that, I'd say let's go with Kraken.
Yeah, the egg producers would be all over that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, so the Kraken. Now with the Kraken in, we're at 32. Now you guys, and as we said, I mean, you could easily take Eklund at number 1 and you'd be all right. So I'll take all of this with a grain of salt, right? Like that sort of 1 through. But what I'm curious about is, where do you see the drop off, right? Like in that area, I mentioned 1 through 5. But if you're, according to yours, you got 1 through 7, right? If you think Eklund could go at 1, where do you think it starts to drop off in this draft, or are they all in that sort of, maybe not the generational players, not the the deep draft that we've seen some years? Is this kind of just like an average draft and everybody in the first round's got a good shot, or is there a drop off somewhere?
I think, I don't want to discredit obviously the players available, but I think it is, maybe not as deep as previous years. And I think where it starts to drop off is, I would say, maybe around 11 to 12. Then you're going to start to drop off. I'd say we had Simon Edvinsson ranked number 11, and I think that probably shocked some people. And I would say after that, it really it drops off, and then you start to get into players that, well, they're going to take a little bit longer to get to the NHL. I think you're having more players that are going to take maybe 2-3 years than compared to some of the guys in the top 10 that could come in 1 to 2 years, right? And that's where the drop off happens, and that's why also they're not going to go maybe in the top 10, and they're going to go 20th or 15th or whatever. So I'd say you're still getting obviously a quality player who should be you should be excited for, obviously, as a fan. But you're going to get a guy that you'll want to be patient with. He's not going to be. I'm trying to think of examples. Pasternak, right? Pasternak went maybe 25th, 26th overall, and then he jumped into the NHL and he's a superstar, all-star. It's like, okay, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get. I don't think. You never know with every draft. Every draft is weird, but I don't think you're going to get that this year. I think it's just a draft you're going to want to be more patient with in your picks and your first rounder. But you have very, very good options all the way down from, Cole Sillinger's one that hovers around the really 15-25 range. Corson Kuhlman's looked great for Canada at the under-18 tournament. He's another junior A Brooks Bandits player that, we saw the success of Cale Makar, and, he's a wild card because he could go anywhere with, up in the top 15, or he could drop. And that could be because of the quality of play that he plays with. I mean, that's always the reputation you get when you're playing junior A hockey. It is what it is, and that's where some teams make a mistake, right?
Yeah.
And then you even have another goalie in Sebastian Casa who just had a monster year, and he leapfrogged into the first round talk with his play even in a shortened season in the WHL. He really proved that 20 games or so was enough for him to show that he is a first rounder. And so, again, I think that's where it drops off around 11 and 12, but it's still a good class once you get lower. Yeah.
Yeah, no, good comments. And I guess the other thing that I'm curious about is while you were putting this together, was there a league that you thought came out on top this year? Whether it's NCAA, the OHL, USHL, was there one that you thought had a few more than the rest, or, is pretty equal across the board?
It was definitely the USHL for me. They are able, because of the Canadian junior leagues all having seasons postponed, the Quebec League did play a decent amount of games, but they had a lot of stoppage or cancellations at points in the season. Obviously, we know the OHL never got to play. WHL was able to play 24 something games, but the USHL pretty much played an entire season. And they even had Chicago Steel lift the I forget the name of the cup, but they won, right? So I think there were a lot of eyes on the USHL, and we saw a lot of players move to play in the USHL because that's where they could go to play, and that's where they could go to show NHL scouts why they should be drafted this year. So for me, definitely the USHL came out on top.
Yeah, I'm not surprised you said that. I was looking at that just this past weekend. Specifically, not so much the Chicago Steel or Waterloo or any of those extra teams, but the National Team Development Program that the U.S. does, and it's. Obviously, it's foreign to us in Canada, right? I mean, we don't have anything that's even remotely close, and yet, they have that program, and you still have players, outside of that program from the USHL that are coming and improving, their worth among the league. That league has, produced some great prospects, and so has the National Team Development Program, obviously, with what is it, 3 first rounders, I think, or first overalls, where they had Jack Hughes. Geez, I'll have to look. But anyway, that's it's a pretty good development program, right, that they've got going. Yeah. And it just seems to get better year after year, right? I mean, it's pretty remarkable.
They're doing an unbelievable job there with that development program. I mean, now they're pumping out prospects like no tomorrow. I mean, now you're getting to the point where that U18 team that is always, having the draft eligible players, you're having a lot of them get drafted. It used to be maybe a select few, but now it's like, all right, there's, you got to look at even the depth players on that team. You got to look at the bottom 6 forwards, the defensemen are not getting that much ice time because they actually, are kind of hidden sometimes under all this talent that, the United States Development Program is able to recruit now. I mean, this year is a little bit, I wouldn't say it's a down year this year. Compared to the year where they had Jack Hughes, Cole Caulfield, Spencer Knight, Trevor Seagrass, I think they had 13 first-round picks. It was something crazy. It was just something ridiculous. But this year, you're not going to have that. You may have 2, Luke Hughes, or you may have 3 or so. But actually, the next 2 development program teams are already looking pretty promising. The U17s this year looked really good. They looked strong, and a lot of talent, a lot of offensive skill, high-end skill that looks like first round talents for 2022's NHL draft. And albeit I didn't see a lot of the players who just were named to the new, I guess what will be the U17 team next year. A lot of scouts are raving about that team as well. So again, we could be in for 2 more strong years through the development program, and at this point, we should just expect it.
Yeah, I've started to expect it anyway. I mean, it's just a matter of watching these players and watching them play, and you at least know, just like this year, that there's going to be a few of them that are going to be in that first round consideration, and it's definitely pretty exciting. Now, what does that say? Would you say about the CHL? Do you notice the is the CHL losing some of its steam, or is it just competing with other leagues now, where didn't have to compete that way before? Or is it still a good program for kids coming out of the midget ranks and that?
I think there's definitely more competition now, and OHL teams are going to have to be more competitive in recruiting some players that may want to go the NCAA route, or OHL teams are having more trouble maybe recruiting American-born players. Because those American-born players want to go play with the development program team because of how well oiled machine it really is, and they prep you for the NHL, but they're prepping you for college and university hockey, and that's what I think their main focus is, because they know not every one of their players that is on that development program team is going to make the NHL. Then they want to prep them, get them physically matured, proper, diet and hitting the gym regularly to get them ready for NCAA hockey. And so I would say, I don't think the CHL leagues are losing their steam or anything like that. I just think they have more competition now. I think they're going to have to be they're going to be more competitive in recruiting players. And I still think the OHL, WHL, and QMJHL are still great leagues, and you get some really passionate fans in some of those fan bases, obviously, like Halifax or the London Knights or the Edmonton Oil Kings, right? They you get good fan turnouts. It's not like it's some you're going to some rinky-dink arena. You're going to a well-classed arena, and so I would say, it's still a great league. And if you're a young prospect, if you're a young player that's got the potential to go to one of those 3 leagues, I definitely think it's still a great option, because it's really going to prepare you for obviously if you're playing in one of those 3 junior leagues, your goal, I would assume, is to make the NHL, and you have a ton of eyes on those 3 leagues. A ton of scouts obviously scout those leagues, and so it's definitely a great gateway to get you going to the NHL.
Yeah. I'm curious. I've been following obviously the CHL since, I've been a kid. I mean, everybody's had some family or somebody that's been around. If you're around a game of hockey, and I grew up watching the Blades, and at one point I even saw the Edmonton Ice before they they moved away, and all WHL. Not a lot of OHL, but now based in Halifax here, I'm watching Zachary Leroux and
Oh boy.
and the Q. And actually, I do want to talk about him because he's an intriguing prospect for me in a number of different ways. And maybe this is a good segue to that. We can talk about him, and he leads into the another conversation, which is this idea around players that might not do so well in the interviews, right? Or maybe there's something, some question marks around them. And he's definitely one of those guys that he's had a couple of suspensions. One of them for spitting on a player, right? He toes the line, right? Every game he's aggressive, but he's a hell of a hockey player, right? And he's there's not much that's awful about him other than this sort of aggressiveness and that. And if he can get that under control, I mean, he's I think even in your guide you said he's not going to be Marchand or Tkachuk, but that's the kind of player he's going to be. He could be a real valuable asset on a team. What's your take on him and your thoughts? Let me just see. You've got him at 19 on your list. Obviously, that's not not necessarily where the Oilers would take him, but that's the type of player I've been screaming that the Oilers need over the years. I'm having watched him play and knowing what he's been into, I'm not sure I'd take a chance on him. But your thoughts?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, you'd have to be willing to take a chance on a player like Leroux. He is, he crosses the line a lot, but like you said, he's a hell of a hockey player. I mean, he's so skilled. I mean, his hands are unbelievable, and he can see passing lanes he's got passing lanes all over the ice, and he's not afraid to attack a defender one-on-one. He's not afraid to go to the net. Like, there's just a lot of things he's not afraid of in the game. And I think that is a really good asset. When you talk about NHL translatable skills, I think that's a great asset as well. That he's not afraid to take it to the house, take it to the middle, and he's not afraid of contact, to push and shove, get under your skin. He does a lot he does a lot of aggravating things. And at the same time, what I'll say is, Brad Marchand's a hell of a hockey player, and once Brad Marchand, and I think we're starting to see him more and more calm down. Maybe it comes with age, right? And Marchand, I'd say, he's not in the hockey news as much as Tom Wilson or Matthew Tkachuk now. Seems like those two are taking the reins from Marchand. And so now Marchand is able to focus on just playing hockey, playing skilled hockey. And, he was unbelievable for Boston in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
I would tell you that he's almost like an underrated player in the league. I know I know people think of him as being a good player, but I still think he's underrated. I mean, year over year, he's in the top, 3-4 in scoring, and he is noticeable every single game. And you're right. And he's even better when he's not over the line, right? Where he's just at the edge of the line. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and same thing can be said about Leroux.
By the way, I hate Marchand and say all those things and I hate the guy.
I'm a big Leaf fan. I've had to see him torch and kick out the Leafs 2-3 years. Yeah. Right. So I get to see that, and I'm like, oh, that's wonderful. But Marchand is, and that's why actually I think we had Leroux as a NHL style comparison to Marchand in the draft guide. We're not saying that he's going to be Brad Marchand. It's just that that's his style of play, and he's going to be a guy that let's hope he doesn't spit on players in the NHL, or else he's going to get a fist to the mouth. But he's a he's a great hockey player, very skilled, and I like a lot of what Leroux does. And then when he crosses the line, then that's what brings me back. I had Leroux up in my top 15 for majority of the year, and I would even say he could be a guy who challenges 10 to 12 spots. But it's those it's those crossing the line moments and losing his temper or just losing his cool, whatever he does is what stops him from being up near the top of the first round. I still think he's a first rounder. I think if he slips out of the first round, I think it is a mistake by NHL teams, because I think,
I've seen him out of the first round on a lot of mock drafts.
And I think it is I think it is because of those issues and how many times he was suspended this year. And it's completely fair, but I think, if you can, and I think you should be able to, reel that stuff in. And it's an asset. Let's be honest, growing up, I never wanted to play against a guy who's agitating me and slashing me or getting under my skin. It's like, dude, just get away from me. Yeah. And so, it can be an asset being an agitator.
Yeah, I 100% love those guys when they play on my team and hate them when they're on somebody else's team.
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah. And if as I say, I mean, I think, and you can appreciate this from your Leafs days, but Kadri, right? I mean, he, if he doesn't cross the line, he is, as Oilers fans know, in the, the McDavid versus Kadri games, he can be incredibly effective as a player. He's got the skill to do well and offensively and defensively, and just plays an all-around game. But when he crosses the line, he does it in such a way that it's, you could argue that he had a huge effect on that Colorado Vegas series, if not, one of the biggest effects on it.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing I was going to say. If Kadri doesn't cross the line, maybe the Leafs have won a playoff series in one of those years against Boston, right? I mean, we could have used that, him in the lineup and be that agitator, get under the skin of Bergeron or Marchand or Pasternak. Just don't cross the line and get suspended. But unfortunately, he did, and he did it 3 times now.
Yeah, maybe I'd be curious in a couple of years if we're back on air again and talking about Leroux and his role on whichever team he lands, or if he makes the team. And a guy like that could end up in the AHL for a couple of years just to kind of hone his game and get the attitude in order. And sometimes it's the right coach or whichever can do that for you. That's good.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk. You guys had Owen Power at number 1. Was he, among everybody at DraftPro, was he the consensus number 1 pick, or was there some debate?
There's definitely debate. We had one of our scouts that was pushing for Dylan Guenther for number 1. We had I think another one that wanted Luke Hughes, actually, even number 1. Brant Clark was number 1. It was kind of all over the place, and we had to have a lot of debates on and a lot of discussions on who we wanted at number 1, and then even to follow 2, 3, 4, 5, and all that. So I think he wasn't really a consensus number 1, but at the same time, I think his raw potential for his size is such a gifted natural talent, being able to be 6'5" and skate the way he does and control the play he does. I mean, when he walks around the offensive zone at 6'5", I mean, I know we don't want to bring, size into it and all that. Sometimes that can be misleading. It's like, who cares if he's 6'5" or whatever. But I mean, this is at some point you gotta say it is rare to have a 6'5" defenseman that has so much poise with the puck and so much control of the game. The way he processes it in all 3 zones, really. It's the same discussion with Victor Hedman, right? It's remarkable to have a defenseman of Hedman's size that can do literally everything that you need in a hockey game.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm a big fan. I mean, we saw it with Cale Makar, these defensemen coming out of the NCAA, right, where they're playing against some guys that are a little bit bigger, a little bit different than what you'd find maybe in the CHL, right? And it just seemed, and I think the maturity, right, of that league versus some of the other leagues, right? But whether or not they stick and play NHL or not is always up for debate, right? But have you heard anything in terms of what his intentions would be, either play or stick in the NCAA?
I've heard rumblings that he wants to return for one more season with the University of Michigan. And I think, honestly, some people were kind of questioning that. And why would you want to do that? If you're going to go first overall, you could most likely jump into the NHL right away. And let's take the discussion of he doesn't want to play in Buffalo out of it. Let's just throw that out the window. I think it's just good for his development. I think, there's absolutely nothing wrong with going back another year and just getting stronger. I mean, he's got a lot of room to still fill out and pack on muscle and get more physical maturity, get stronger with the puck. And what if he goes for another year, lights it up, and is the best NCAA player, best NCAA defenseman or player, and then he comes to the NHL and maybe he does what Makar has done, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's absolutely, and the NCAA has really proven to be such a great, going back to if you choose OHL or I mean, it doesn't, you go either or. And I think the NCAA is proving that it is a viable development league. And I think so. That's what I've heard with Power. I don't know if it will be true. Who knows if that would even persuade Buffalo to not pick him at number one, because they would want their number one to jump in the NHL right away. Who knows? Not too sure, but that's what I've heard.
Yeah. And if you you got Power at 1. You guys had Clark at 2 and Hughes at 3.
Mm-hmm.
You just said it, right? Some folks had Hughes at number 1.
Yeah.
I actually thought that, which is I think a little bit. It's just such a weird season, right? But I thought Hughes has kind of dropped back a couple with some reports, some prospect analysts. Is there a reason, or do you think that just a couple other people are showing a little bit better right now?
I think it's a little bit of both of kind of what you touched on right there. I think it's a little bit of some prospects have shown that they may have more potential than him. I think a guy like Dylan Gunther and Matt Beniers are two guys that maybe a more impactful or effective hockey player. I think someone like even Kent Johnson, the third University of Michigan player, he's such a dynamic hockey player, lightning, quick hands, and he's a guy who has the potential to put up some serious point numbers in the NHL and be a power play catalyst for an organization. So would you rather have that or Luke Hughes? And I think the other thing is with Luke Hughes is I think because he's the youngest of the Hughes brothers and he plays the same position as Quinn, I think he gets obviously looked at as, let's see, we got another Quinn Hughes on our hands. And it's not really the case. I mean, Quinn Hughes is such an offensively dynamic, high-end defenseman.
Yeah.
But what Luke Hughes is, he's more of a workhorse in the terms of he is an all-around great two-way player. His defensive game is still developing, but I was surprised when I saw he was 6'2" this year. I mean, I was like, that was shocking to me. I didn't realize how much he grew. And so, much like Power, again, Luke Hughes has a lot of muscle to put on as well, and that could help him in creating a solid two-way game in the NHL where he's able to keep attackers to the outside, utilizing his gap control and sometimes you don't even need to be physical as a defenseman to excel in any league and especially in the NHL. If you can keep the outside players to the outside, you keep puck carriers to the outside, and you defend the middle ice, then you're an effective defenseman, right? I mean, that's one of the biggest things I look for in scouting defensemen is how they protect middle ice, especially on zone entry and all that. And I think Luke Hughes can do that because obviously he's a phenomenal skater. He's just as good of a skater as Quinn and Jack. So I think there's nothing holding him back from being a two-way defenseman, but to get back to your question, I think it's because I think one reason why he's maybe dropped a little bit is because he gets compared to his older brother Quinn, and Luke, let's be honest, hasn't shown that same offensive ability as Quinn did in his draft year and as he's doing now with Vancouver.
Yeah, and I mean, Quinn's exceptional, right? Like, he's just outstanding.
Him and McCarr are just, like they can do so much in all three zones with the puck and create so much just from a skating standpoint. They can just, the way they move, it's remarkable.
Yeah. And I hate him for it because he's a Canucks player. But no, I respect the talent, man. That's fun to watch for sure. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Oilers and Edmonton in general. Right, there's a couple Oil Kings that are potential first rounders. Right, so that's pretty cool. Let's start with maybe the one that's highest up the list. Which we chat a little bit about him, Gunther. Yeah, what are your thoughts on him as a player?
The guy can really do a lot for you for a hockey team. Very versatile. I think one thing I really like about him is he doesn't show a lack of effort when he plays away from the puck or back checking. I think he, from the games I've seen from him, he's really involved in all areas, and he utilizes his speed. I think that's my favorite part about him. Maybe his shot, but I think just the skating is really top notch, and he may be one of the at least one of the best forward skaters. I mean, I would still give Luke Hughes as probably the best skater in this draft, obviously, but Dylan Gunther's right up there, especially when it comes to straight line breakaway speed. He can really take off with just the real quick, tight, linear crossovers and just explode up ice. So
completely off the mark here, but I knew Byron was fast, but he's shown a whole different level in the playoffs this year. Like, them just throwing the puck up and him zooming past everybody. Anyway, that's I'd love to see him in the All-Star game going up against McDavid and seeing now with the puck is a whole different story, but Byron is crazy fast, and I didn't realize it, watching him on the Flames for all those years. But anyway,
no, I agree with you. I was really surprised with Byron. Josh Anderson's another one in Montreal. He really can explode out of the gate. Obviously here in Toronto, you have Mikheyev. I mean, getting back to what you said also is no one can do it with the puck like McDavid. Yeah, it's unreal. But I think Gunther is someone, and you know what, he's actually able to control that puck at top speed, and he controls it really well. Obviously, we're not going to compare him to McDavid and how well, because that's generational level, and no one can beat that. But Gunther is definitely someone that I would have no problem handling the transition and utilizing his speed to bring the puck up and come to the neutral zone to get a clean zone entry and start an attack.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. I mean, I made the move out to Halifax this year, so I haven't had a chance to watch. And of course, nobody has watched a lot of games, unfortunately. But it was something I missed this year, for sure. Now you got him as number 24. Some people in their mock draft have him come into the Oilers. Sebastian Casa in net. We talked a little bit about him at the onset. He's a big kid, right? He's 6'6", I think. Good, mobile goalie for that size, and most of the good ones are. But he was somebody who wasn't really on the scene until this year, right? And do you see him? Do you think he's a for sure first round pick this year? And what are your thoughts on him? And keep in mind, I do know that there's some guys that are goalie specialists. I don't know if you're, it's a little bit different if you're watching players most of the time than goalies. And I've got some friends that refuse to even talk about goalies. So if it's
Yeah.
not an area of comfort for you,
Yeah.
but I know you've watched them, so yeah, let me
I
know your
actually,
thoughts.
I actually, I took it on a little more this year to scout goalies a little harder, be a little more in depth with them, and I think honestly, I'll be honest. When I first started scouting, I hated scouting goalies. I didn't know what to look for. I was like, I mean, you stop the puck. I mean, that's all you need in a goalie, right? But obviously, it was way more than that. But yeah, with Casa, you touched on it there. I mean, he's 6'6", and his mobility, his flexibility, his athleticism is off the charts for the size he has. It's remarkable. His ability to make, such just one quick lateral push over to make a cross ice save, and he can do it so quickly. And then he has those long legs and big body to just cover any angle, any hole when he pushes over side to side. I mean, and that's what makes him really so deadly in net and really unbeatable at the junior level. Is
Yeah,
that
which
when
is
he comes
not
across?
common, right? Like,
Yeah,
those numbers are pretty ridiculous when you look at them.
I don't have them off the top of my head, but I think he won 17 games or something like that.
Yeah,
He went
17,
17
1
and
and
1.
1. Yeah.
And that again, it goes to say that he did nothing but put himself into a first round conversation. I think he was a goalie that definitely got looked at, obviously because of his size. I mean, nowadays everyone, it's no secret, NHL teams are going to look for a goalie that at least is 6'3" and over, and they're just going to develop them. I mean that and it's unfair to some of the smaller goalies, but it just seems like that's a normal occurrence now, especially come draft day. You see more and more goalies that maybe you didn't even hear of as a scout get drafted, but you look at their size and it's like, okay, now I know why.
Yeah.
But for Casa, his numbers and his play speaks for itself, and then you have his ability in net that is what makes him a first round talent. I think he's definitely, and there's holes in his game that I've seen that he can get better at. One is being a little too deep in his crease and relying more on his size to make the save than being aggressive. Coming off that goal line would be sometimes a better option, and that's going to come with a good goalie coach from whoever gets drafted him. And at the end of the day, I actually really think he would be a great pick for Edmonton at 19. I think this is a goalie that develop him right. You don't have to rush him, and you could have your number one goalie for the next decade, yeah. Right? And at the end of the day, let's look at what the playoffs are. Let's look at what's happening in the playoffs right now, right? You got the two best goalies going up against each other. You had Price against Fleury in the other round, and I think more and more it's becoming so evident that you need a clear-cut number one goalie to succeed in the playoffs, to win 16 games for the Stanley Cup. So I think more and more teams should be less scared of drafting a goalie in the first round. I'll be as bold as saying Seattle should draft Jesper Wallstedt number 2 overall.
Yeah.
Come to my Twitter mentions and debate me now.
Yeah.
But I think, getting back to Edmonton, obviously, I think he would be a great pick for Edmonton. As if you can have a solid goalie back there and let McDavid and Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins do their thing, I mean, that's setting you up for playoff success down the road.
Yeah. And, of course, Nuge has been re-signed this year, today for another 8 years. So
great contract, too, by the way.
Keeping the band together for a little while. Obviously, I mean, I said it earlier today. I mean, that one thing the Oilers have or will have at least for the next 4 or 5 years is one of the top 5 power plays in the league without question. I mean those 3 are the core, and just about anybody can play with them, and they're still gonna produce. So that's pretty awesome. All right, let's. So we talk about. I mean, you mentioned it there. I mean, the Oilers are picking at 19, roughly about where Casa might go. And a lot of people think, he'll go in and around that that spot. You guys aren't the only ones. You think the Oilers will take a run at him? You know what? Curiosity for me is kind of funny. Casa grew up kind of playing minor hockey in the Edmonton Minor Hockey Association, that area, Fort Saskatchewan, and that. But he's born in Hamilton, so it'll be interesting as he gets. If he makes a name for himself, who takes credit for him, but GTA or Edmonton. We'll see. But what do you think? You guys had somebody else different when you had Edmonton going at, I think 20 or 21, because we didn't know where they were going to sit when you guys made when you did your mock draft. Let me have a look. Your thoughts? You think that's a good shot that they'll be taking him at 19?
I think it's a great shot because of I think, and it was funny because I was gonna say I think it's a great shot because he's an Edmonton hometown boy. Well, now I know he's not. so now it's a little interesting, but I think you could still play that narrative because he grew up playing Edmonton minor hockey, Edmonton Oil Kings. It's just kind of like, oh, it fits perfect, right? It's just a great story. So I think that's definitely a feel good story to take a run at him. And I think, he is ranked around where Edmonton is going to pick at 19. I think that's definitely a slot that he can go where I wouldn't say it's too high either. And that's another thing. I think they could definitely take some other players and I would look at some of the wingers that are available. One being Brendan Othman or Sasha Pastujov. Even Cole Sillinger is one who's, he is a centerman, but I could see him playing wing and all that because he's very versatile in that sense. And so I think there's a plethora of options that I think really, when it comes down to it, you're just going to see who goes off the board and then comes up at pick number 19. But I think he's definitely worth taking a run on because of his raw potential and the upside he brings. I mean, he has number one elite goalie starting upside. And then let's say if you go with Brendan Othman, he's got upside of a top six forward, and he could be, a quality second line player, or he could be a great winger to McDavid, or a great winger to Nugent Hopkins, right? So who would you rather have? Let's say Brendan Othman doesn't exceed expectations and is not playing with McDavid and he's playing with Brian Nugent Hopkins. Would you rather have a second line winger who's putting up, let's say 20, 25 goals a year, 60 points? He's playing on the power play. Obviously Brendan Othman plays kind of a chippy style as well. Or would you rather have in my opinion, a goalie who could be an elite goalie in the NHL, and a number one goalie that can play 50, 60 games a year. Yeah.
No, good points. I'm excited for what the future brings for Edmonton, and curious in terms of there's a lot of unknowns still, which for every team there is at this time of year. Obviously, the one of the big unknowns is where Dylan Holloway steps in, I don't know how bad the injury was that kind of kept him out from even having a look or being on the taxi squad or anything like that at the end of the year. I think it was just the wrist. So he should be all right. And then Clefbaum, there's some talk that he might not even be playing next year. So we'll see what the needs might change come draft day, and who knows on the draft floor what happens then. We're just about at the end of the hour. I want to just quickly talk. We'll take 5 minutes and then we'll call it a night. But there's two guys, and we're going to skip. I like Tyler Wright in Kingston, but we're going to skip right down to what I think is going to be an exciting draft, which is 2023. You've got two guys that are really unbelievable with Bedard and Michkov. Do you have a clear favorite in your mind right now?
Bedard for me. After I saw him at the U18s, that kid. There's not enough words. I just talking about him right now, I'm speechless. I mean, you watch him play, and he's borderline exceptional, borderline special. and the way he can shoot the puck. More and more when I see him shoot, I just think, how's that shot going to be in 5 years? I mean, that's going to be disgusting. I mean, that's going to be Matthews level, let's say, right now. That's going to be Ovechkin level. It's just, his release points, he disguises it. He can pull through traffic to change angles. He does it all, really. He can shoot. And then, the backhander he scored, I think it was against Sweden in the semifinals and the U18s that went viral. I mean, it's like the kid is known for the big moments, and he makes it known. And he's not like, much like what we were talking about earlier about size and all that. Yeah, Bedard's not the biggest guy, but he's not afraid of really anything. And you can tell he wants to be the best. I mean, he was having a good tournament, and I think he came out and said, I need to be better or whatever. Or, and I think it was another game at the U18s where he had a penalty shot. He missed the penalty shot, and he was so mad at himself, and he goes out and scores a goal. Yeah. I mean, it just shows how special and how much he wants to be for his team.
Yeah, and he's shown exceptional maturity for his age, right? I mean, he even just going over to, was it Sweden he went to? Yeah, like, he's 15 years old, and he's, he understands enough to, get on a plane and get out and play some hockey and just continue to develop his game. And definitely, I mean, one of the challenges, obviously, for Michkov is we're not going to see as much of him as we would, say, Bedard. I mean, Bedard, you could just do a YouTube and you'll get every type of highlight. I'm curious your thoughts on the under 18. I thought they, deferred from him on the power play. Like, I thought they didn't use him as much as they could have, the other guys playing the power play. And I don't know if it was like, just his age and the other players maybe not respecting that or maybe being even a little bit threatened by his skill level. Who knows? But I just felt like, man, he could have had. There were some times he sat there waiting for the shot that, I think any other team would have just got it to him and he would have potted a goal. Maybe I'm making that up in my head because I knew how good he was, but what were your thoughts on that? Did you notice any of that too, or is that just me?
Well, no, I actually, there were times I saw him, I don't know if it was for a full power play or just briefly on a power play, where he would shift into the bumper spot.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, what are you doing in the bumper spot? You have the best shot in this tournament. You need to be at the face-off circle and letting that rip. Now, Shane Wright made it known. Obviously, he's got a great shot as well.
Yeah.
But, I'm not going to, not to discredit Shane Wright because I love Shane Wright, but Connor Bedard's shot is better.
Yeah.
And Bedard, I think, I was a little surprised as well that, he wasn't utilized as much on the power play. I thought he definitely should have been at, where his normal spot was when he played with Regina in the 12, 13 games he played before coming over to the U18s, which was the right side half wall, and he would swing down and let that shot go. Normally toe drag, pull it through a defender and get that, release top corner or really anywhere. He doesn't need to go top corner. He's just perfect. He's got perfect accuracy and just knows where he wants it and he'll put it there. So yeah, I thought they underutilized him, but I guess at the end of the day, it all worked out since they won.
Yeah. And really, I mean, that's the end result's what you're looking for. And sometimes, you just let a player like that play into that role and earn it a little bit more than he might otherwise have to going into, say, Regina or something like that. But,
yeah.
Hey, look, I thoroughly enjoyed this tonight. It was great talking hockey with you. You definitely understand your stuff. I really enjoyed the 2021 draft guide put on by DraftPro, and I made mention of it. There's also a couple of futures looks there at 2022 and then 2023. Some write-ups. I think it's worth the $10, if not more, but don't raise the price for these folks that want to go and get it. Definitely worth it. And there's there's all sorts of things in there for everybody that's looking at this. There's team reports. There's a few write-ups in there. And if you want to go even further down that trail, there's the yearbook as well, which I haven't had a look at it yet, but Jared says is 10,000 pages and
pretty
quite in depth. Yeah, I also enjoyed you had some of the game reports in the draft guide, which was great.
Yeah.
So I scanned through those. I didn't read them all, but it was fairly well put together. So good job. I'll definitely be a regular subscriber of that. I'll get you back on hopefully sometime. And as I said, really enjoyed it. Looking forward to it, and we'll see what happens on the 23rd. For those of you that don't know or haven't been watching, McDavid won the Hart. No big surprise there. But he also won the Ted Lindsay as well, which we know about. And one of the sort of cool things with that is that there are only 3 players that have won it 3 times before they are 24 or younger. And it's Wayne Gretzky, Ovechkin, and now Connor McDavid. So he's definitely, we talk about exceptional players. He's exceptional. We're lucky here in Edmonton to get to watch him play. And lucky as fans, NHL fans, to get to watch a guy like that play. Just like Oilers fans are tough on Matthews. I see that in the background, but definitely we're lucky to watch him play too. He's a hell of a talent. Yeah.
And Connor Bedard will be the next one to do what McDavid's doing.
Oh, you know what? It is fun to watch him, the highlights now, even now, right? Like at 15 years old. I just as long as he's nowhere in the western in the west,
East Coast, we'll keep him east.
I'd be all right with East Coast. Well, maybe the West, but not in our division. So I could watch him as many times as possible. And I, as much as I would love to say it, as much as I'd love to see him on the Oilers, I don't ever want to be picking in that range anytime soon, unless if it's some like crazy draft lottery where you can get there from the top spot. But
no, that's completely fair.
All right. Well, thanks again, Jared. Really appreciated having you on. If you don't mind staying for a bit, we'll close up the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. We're going to be back next week, next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Mountain. We're going to be talking draft prospects all the way up until draft day on the 23rd. Lots to talk about, lots of different people to talk to, and we're going to have some fun. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Have a great night.
Oilers Live Podcast.